the other day, some friends of ours sent us a picture of, so husband and wife, they were going to a masquerade party, and they both had masks on. And I responded, "It's giving Eyes Wide Shut." And I felt simultaneously like a dad trying to sound young, and like that was the most old dad comment I could make, because I was like referring to this old Stanley Kubrick movie. And weird because it's like a sex cult movie. So I've been thinking a lot about that ever since I sent that text.
Happy for you.
Anyway, I forget why I said that.
We
Oh,
should
because
call
you
the
said it's giving
podcast
Rubik's Cube.
Copay and make Hale pay us to be on it so that we can listen to things like that.
In a way, I did kind of pay you guys to be here today.
All right, we gotta lock in.
Yeah. All right. Hello, I'm Stephen Hale from The Banner, and I'm here with Sarah Grace Taylor, who's just come almost directly from the legislature, probably, which I think was the same as the last time we did this.
Sure.
You had another late night
2 weeks ago when you said we'll do this again, and I said I don't know.
That's right.
And
We
did it 2
thought
weeks
we
later.
wouldn't talk about the legislature again for a year, which was very naive. So you've just finished up a special session at the legislature. We're going to get into all of what happened, what it means, what happens going forward, all that. But first, we've both been in the middle of either reporting on this or watching this week, but a lot of people maybe haven't been and may not even know what we're talking about. So can you just start from what happened at the legislature, why you were back there this week, and then we'll kind of get into more of the meaning of it.
Yeah, there was a 3-day special session in which the legislature came back together and passed a new congressional map, something that usually happens in a 10-year cycle with the census, happened off cycle, and they repealed laws to let them do that this week. And what that does effectively is split Tennessee's most Democratic district, which is the 9th district, that used to contain all of Memphis, into 3 different districts, and also shift a lot of Middle Tennessee representation.
Right. So this all started, at least in Tennessee. We'll get to kind of some of the national context, but Marsha Blackburn, who is a senator and gubernatorial candidate, and the favorite to be the next governor in Tennessee, I think on, April 30th, so 2 weeks ago as we're recording this, posted online calling on the governor to call a special session to do this. And very explicitly, it was like, we can get one more Republican seat. He should do this. She also posted at the president, I think. President Donald Trump said he talked to the governor and was like, this is great. We can get an extra seat for Republicans in Congress. And the next day, the governor called a special session. And so I walked through all that just to say, like, this has all happened in a very short amount of time.
You're being generous. 9 days ago, the Supreme Court said they basically gutted the Voter Rights Act that said previously that you can do certain amount of districting based on racial demographic to make fair voting. Mm-hmm. They took away that protection, which affected some districts in like Louisiana and other states.
Right.
Marsha Blackburn used that as impetus to go after Memphis, which is largely black, but was not a Voting Rights Act district because it wasn't drawn to accommodate that. It just naturally occurred that it was a black district.
Yes, and so this gets into what I think we want to talk a lot about, because there's the partisan side of this, and there's the racial demographic side of it. Those overlap, of course. Memphis is one of the city with one of the largest black populations in the country. And the district that encompassed Memphis was the only black majority district in Tennessee. And so, of course, a lot of the immediate opposition to this plan by Republicans was focused on that they're splitting up the black vote in Memphis in a way that is going to decrease, the representation that black people in Tennessee have. Kind of an interesting thing that has come up, I think, this week during the session that I think gets at this is the kind of legal precedent up to now has been that, and I'm not a lawyer, but in general, partisan gerrymandering is legal. You can draw maps on the basis of it's going to help Republicans or it's going to help Democrats, and you'll get away with it in the court. But if you're explicitly racially gerrymandering, that has been, we'll see that, like you said, the Voting Rights Act has been effectively gutted, but racial gerrymandering has been struck down or has been harder to get through. And so all week, the Republican sponsors kept saying This is about politics. One of the senators was even saying openly, I think it was Senator Stevens kept saying in response to questions, this is to maximize Republican seats in Congress.
They all did, starting with Marsha Blackburn.
Right, because that is we assume, most legally defensible position, just to say, no, it's a partisan power grab, but it's not a racial thing. But the effect, the very obvious effect that I want to get you to kind of explain more that you've heard, people talking about in the session, was the way that these districts, even though they say they didn't do it with a racial lens, Cameron Sexton even talked about, we took the racial demographic data off our software when we made these maps or whatever. But it splits the black population of Memphis up into three almost completely even groups into three separate congressional districts. So can you kind of talk about how that was all discussed and fought over and brought out because of the way that the Republicans were kind of obfuscating that effect?
Yeah, there was one day of committee meetings on Wednesday. This was only a 3-day session. And in these committee meetings, all the Republican leadership kept saying this is strictly partisan, which, as you pointed out, is not usually a good defense. People try to deny partisan gerrymandering typically, but now they're being very brazen about it. But people were quick to point out that because of Memphis's population being more than 60% black, it's innately also racial gerrymandering. The argument over whether or not that was the Republicans' intent, of course, you can't know someone's intent, but one Democratic lawmaker from Memphis likened it to getting hit by a pickup truck, saying, if you hit me with a pickup truck and I die, it doesn't really matter if it was your intent to kill me. So the new districts split almost exactly evenly across 3 districts, including the new District 5, which is Andy Ogle's seat, that now goes from Murray County in Middle Tennessee all the way to the Arkansas border and is a pretty massively gerrymandered shape, which we have a story going up today that looks at these maps. We'll talk about the demographic stuff, but also how these fare on kind of the national gerrymandering scale. That one does not fare well. But now Memphis's black population is split almost exactly into thirds across those 3 districts. And now, instead of having a district where they represent 60% and have a voice, they're going to not have any more than 30% in any district in Tennessee. So there's not any minority-majority district anywhere in the state. Now, Republicans who said that wasn't political, you can look at Knoxville and Chattanooga, which both pretty consistently vote Republican for congressional seats. They were not split up the same way, and there are significant black populations there. They weren't split up. But that also undermines an argument that William Lamberth, the House Majority Leader, made, which is, this isn't about race. This is about balancing urban and rural areas, which also did not happen on the eastern part of the state where they vote red. Had arguably already happened in Nashville in the last round of redistricting, so it's hard to compare, and really seemed to only target Memphis.
What was Lamberth's kind of point there? What is he talking about trying to balance the rural and urban?
Lamberth, who represents Sumner County, and says that makes him a better legislator because there are some more dense populations, if we don't want to use urban or suburban, we'll just say denser populations, and some that are more rural or have less density. He's like, that makes me think of the agrarian needs of the state as well as the metropolitan needs of a state, and that makes me a better lawmaker. Whatever is true on their intent around race, the idea that they balanced out density is mathematically not true. That just did not happen.
Right.
And was a weird defense in the middle of this committee meeting that only Lamberth brought up. And again, in the context of everyone else was just being flagrant about this is political, I don't know why you would even go down that lane.
There was also several instances in which Democratic lawmakers in committees or on the floor would ask, do you know what the black population of Memphis is? Do you know that it's the largest, black population in one place in Tennessee? All these things. And Republicans would feign ignorance about that, or be like, we don't. I guess, they kept trying to say they weren't thinking about that, but they even went so far as to act like, who even knew that there was a lot of black people living in Memphis? As if that's doesn't have such a rich and well-known black history in that city.
Well, that's an interesting, just on that point.
Yeah.
Not only were Democrats doing that, which is like a common thing to do what they call groundwork and ask these kind of obvious baiting questions before they get to the crux of an argument. But Republicans also pretty much just had one line the whole time in committees and on the floor. They just kept saying, this is about, I think it was Sexton's quote that was population and politics.
Right.
And that's what they just kept saying. And they would not entertain any discussion. There was not a lot of meaningful discussion. Now, part of that, of course, is this extremely expedited process in which the map was not published until Wednesday morning and was given final approval on Thursday, meaning they had already voted on it before it was public.
Yeah.
But also there was just like, and I guess that's probably where we're going next, but the complete dissolution of what you probably think the legislative process looks like, because it was not transparent. There were protests, lawmakers walking off the floor yesterday, like just not, it was not a discussion. It was a predetermined idea.
Well, it's kind of a microcosm of what they're creating with the congressional map, right? Because the supermajority allows them to do that in some ways, which is that they have all the votes. They have enough votes to move things through committee and do things quickly. And that's what allowed them to redraw these maps, which will then give them every congressional seat in Tennessee, most likely. So, yeah. And you kind of were talking about that line they kept going back to. And I want to talk about the lawsuits that are coming or have already been filed. That seemed to me like that was kind of a preemptive defense, or at least making sure that the record didn't include them even talking about racial stuff. Is just every quote you can find from a Republican is going to say this is about politics and population and rural folks or whatever, and it's gonna, there's not going to be anything you can pin them on as far as the racial effect of that.
Yeah, you definitely can't prove their intent. And also, I think like just keeping the number of total comments made low makes their life easier when it comes to a legal battle.
And just for the record, we should note Governor Bill Lee signed this like immediately yesterday, so that it is in law now.
And while we're talking about immediate impacts, also got to point out that State Senator Brent Taylor, the only Republican out of Memphis, filed to run for the redrawn 9th congressional district as soon as it became Republican, and in fact before he voted on the map to make it likely Republican district. So again, predetermined idea here.
So like you said, I think it's just important to underscore, because we weren't in those meetings where they talked about these maps. No, their intent is not something we can say, but the effect is just a factual matter. It's clear that it splits up the black population of Memphis, and in doing so dilutes their representation in any one district.
An interesting note, though, just on the meetings where they talked about the map, is how maps come to be. And basically the state Senate introduced this map, and they worked with an outside consultant who is doing national consulting with a lot of red states right now to do gerrymandering. Drafted a map, proposed it to the House. The House worked with the ethics commissioner, Doug Himes, who they always work with for redistricting, to amend it. And the arguments came down to, were they going to draw this map in a way that benefited Brent Taylor to run effectively, which they did, and were they going to draw the map in a way that hurt Representative Johnny Garrett, who's running for Congress, which did happen. And they were in such a fight about this at the beginning of the week that we kept hearing from sources, and we're pretty much able to confirm that the White House was given the tiebreaker vote on which map was introduced. And this is all happening as late as Tuesday night. And they introduced it Wednesday morning, finished it on Thursday.
Yeah. So we said that this has been signed into law, but we've also mentioned there was immediately lawsuits filed. NAACP filed a lawsuit. I don't know if there have been others or not. Maybe there will be others. But what's the legal situation right now as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, the NAACP did file the first, and I think right now, only lawsuit. We're recording this Friday morning, this past Thursday afternoon. But Representative Steve Cohen, who's the congressman that currently represents and has, I think, for 20 years represented Memphis in the 9th District, also threatened pretty much that he would sue this week, or at least he would be a party to whatever lawsuit would come. So we'll see what happens. One of the state representatives out of Memphis suggested yesterday that the city secede from Tennessee. It's on the Arkansas border. They're like, let's just dip out. That probably won't happen, but I do think it shows how seriously they're taking it, and that there will be any number of legal angles that they try to take to prohibit this, particularly because we're in the middle of an election cycle, and the timing itself might not be kosher. And in 2022, when the Nashville map was redrawn and the Democrats tried to sue to prevent that map, they were told, oh, well, this lawsuit in May is too close to the August primary for us to entertain the lawsuit because we have to get through with the August primary. Well, they just redrew it in May with an August primary. So
Right.
I think you'll see legal arguments around the timing as well, not just the actual practical map draw.
Yeah. So do we know yet if, actually, as I'm sitting here, I'm not sure which district I now live in. I won't make you tell me specifically on
No,
our
but I
pod.
know where you
But
live,
do
and
you-
I think yours didn't change.
But do you like, for people listening to this, I mean, obviously a lot of people listening to us will be in Nashville, but Nashville's different pieces of Nashville are in different districts, and even they were already in different districts, now they're in different
More
districts
different
again.
districts,
Yeah. So, how do people figure that out? Is that site updated yet? I know there was always a thing you could put your address in and whatever, but
I would say almost certainly not updated in the last 24
Sure.
hours. I don't know the answer to that. There is a map that's out. We've published it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, we're going to run a story that has more interactive maps that you can zoom in on closer, so that might help too. Big takes for Nashville people. District 7, which just had that special election last year, used to go north to south and cover like the whole length of the state vertically. Now it moves very much east. So it basically starts in Montgomery County, moves east. So that's a big change. If you were in Andy Ogle's district, there is a good chance you're not now. If you live in Nashville, you are not in his district anymore. And there's a lot of little changes like that. So if you're anywhere on the perimeter or really in Davidson County, it's worth looking.
And
to see
am
if
I
that
right
changed.
that now, I think both in looking at the map and I saw someone saying this, that there are people in Williamson County now who are in a shared district with people in parts of Shelby County? Does that district reach all the way
Oh yeah, that's
west that way?
So
I mean,
Ogle's district I talked about, District 5, is now, it still starts as west as parts of Murray County and parts of Williamson, which it always has covered. And now it goes in this like upside down U that borders multiple states all the way over to wrap around under District 9 that used to cover Memphis and basically cradle it and take up the whole Arkansas border of Tennessee.
yeah. People look at these maps, they can, like you said,
You'll know which district I'm talking about when you see it.
yeah. What we were just talking about makes me think of another thing that was discussed a good bit during the session that I think is interesting to think through, which is they were talking about the idea of like shared interests in these districts. That one way of thinking about it would be that you want districts to include groups of people that, broadly speaking, have things in common, whether it's, the type of the part of the state they live in or the type of industries that they have there, so that their representatives can kind of speak for them. And that the sort of district you just described is not like that. Obviously, it's going
Right.
to include any number of parts of Tennessee, different, rural, urban, different highway concerns, different. I mean, name anything, and it's like all different.
There's
And
also just more practical parts of it than that. If a district is in a dozen counties, how is it going to have an office for like regular basic government services that is convenient to all the people there?
Right.
How are the people in Shelby County going to possibly have as much access to Andy Ogles as someone who lives in Williamson County?
right.
But never mind politics of any of it. Like, that's just impractical.
Right.
And what is Ogles going to have a Shelby County office? Are 3 different congressmen going to have offices in the city of Memphis? Like, that just seems impractical that that's how it's going to end up going.
Yeah. I mean, and Steve Cohen was there testifying in some of these committees, and he made the point that, he was like, under Joe Biden, when there were some issues in Memphis, they had a Democratic representative who knows all the Democrats and was able to have a quick line to the White House, and that was good for anyone who lived in Shelby County, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And that what he said to them was like, there's going to be another Democratic president, and it's not going to be good for anyone in Tennessee to have no Democrats in D.C.
Exactly.
We can all maybe wish that it wasn't the case, that like a Republican or Democrat has an easier time getting their phone call answered when someone in their party's in the White House, but you can see how those kind of things matter too. And
Like
he
how
brought that
Marcia
up.
got the president to effectively call a special session when
Right.
she's not governor yet.
Right, and so you can now imagine a situation where if a Democrat wins the next presidential election, you have a Democratic president in a state with only Republican congresspeople and 2 Republican senators. And even in the best case scenario where everyone's very friendly, you could see why that could get complicated, but we're not in that scenario. I think it's obvious to say. So
Cohen likened it to a baseball team and said, you don't want all good hitters, you need a pitcher too.
There were a lot of metaphors going around there. We had a lottery, Bill Mitchell's lottery comment.
That it's more likely that you would win the Powerball, which Cohen had originally advocated for in Tennessee, and win $1 million than it is that you would accidentally exactly split Memphis Black voters into thirds.
Yeah, which is interesting. So I have on my outline here, I have a bullet point. It just says Stephen's anxiety. I'm wondering if you share this with me. This is just a thought that came to me as I was spiraling about all this. I mean, which is that the gerrymandering and the aggressive redistricting that we're seeing just feels like a larger version of the way, or at least an echo of the way that our information like ecosystems are being siloed, and the way that our national leaders or political leaders can kind of create their own information environment, and so that the people who support them can hear the things that they want to hear and not hear the things they don't want to hear. And now we have politicians who are able to, or are using their power to draw districts to where, yeah, I'm in a majority. I'm in I've plus 30 district, and so they're less and less likely to ever hear that someone doesn't like what they're doing, because they've literally made it so that they don't have to. And this just worries me. It seems like a potential issue in a lot of ways. Your thoughts?
Yeah. People live in echo chambers, politicians, particularly those in power, sow those echo chambers so that they can get their people aligned and to follow with whatever they want to do / their party wants to do, which is a lot of the problem, is that basically you vote for a team, you don't think independently anymore, right? However, there's a lot of effort to make sure people's voices were heard this week. There were hundreds of protesters at the Capitol every day of this special session, and I don't think one of them thought that they were going to be able to stop this vote from happening, but they wanted to make damn sure that people knew they were upset about it. I mean, I saw a Republican refer to yesterday as M7 as if to compare it to January 6th. And they said that the Capitol someone laid siege to the Capitol. They accused Representative Justin Jones of trying to burn down the Capitol when he burnt a piece of paper with the Confederate flag on it in the hallway. But tensions were high and protesters were more organized than you typically see. Relatedly, House Speaker Cameron Sexton was quicker to kick them out of the gallery than I've ever seen him be yesterday. They left ringing alarms under their seats, and some people got arrested. And it was more than just your average. There are usual suspects, like maybe 24 people who you see up there pretty regularly protesting things, and more power to those people. But this was more than the usual suspects this week. This was more heated. I have never seen Democrats walk off the floor like they did in the House. I've never seen Democrats take over a meeting like they did in the Senate. Charlene Oliver, she climbed on her desk and pulled out a banner that said "No Jim Crow 2.0." and physically fought security as they tried to take it away from her for, it's got to be 45 seconds this went on. It was true tension and actual backlash. Sometimes that's politically posed too, like the questions we talked about. But this was earnest concern for democracy and a lot of it.
Yeah, and I think you're right to emphasize that. And I think in a way it's that is what I find so challenging to think about, is because a situation has been created where all of that can happen, and Cameron Sexton can very calmly just sit there and let them chant, and then
giggle when someone brings up Jim Crow.
Right, because they know, there's a scenario where if you see that kind of backlash at the Capitol, elected officials are thinking, some of these people live in my district. I mean, this is a public backlash to what I'm doing, and it may affect me. And everyone there knows that it is not going to, in an electoral sense. That's not me saying that it doesn't matter to express your opinion, or that, as a side note, I've been extremely proud to be your colleague and Martin Cherry's colleague this week, because your guys' coverage of this is so important. And I think, 10 years from now, we want anyone who's trying to figure out the situation in the state to be able to look back and read that coverage and look at those photos and see what really happened. So the truth of what happened matters always, but it is just a very difficult, and concerning situation. I mean, to think like that you've created a situation where people can do protest to that degree, but the system is such that it's hard. There are fewer channels for it to be put into where it will affect who's actually representing them. I
am so rarely in a conversation with someone where I'm the optimist about Tennessee government, but
hit me.
There's basically my nihilism with government the last few years has come down to this. It's either going to continue getting worse till the world ends, or there's going to be a tipping point. Yesterday felt as close to a tipping point as I have felt in 2 years of covering 2 special sessions, the whole 2-year session, special congressional election, all the stuff in Tennessee. Yesterday was as close to a tipping point as I've ever seen. I've covered several different governments in the last decade, and I have never seen as many lawmakers crying as I saw yesterday. I have never seen someone burn something in a Capitol and not even get impacted by the police that they were right next to. Yesterday was inarguably like a tentpole moment in whatever movement is going to, if any movement is ever going to, shift the needle in Tennessee. How long will that take? I don't know. Is that going to be realized in November elections like Democrats were saying after yesterday? No, that's not going to happen. Will it start to turn because people just saw Memphis get their vote taken away? I think there's a very real chance of that. And I think for every reference to Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan, all these things that Black voters have gone through in the South before this week, you have to remember that those things stopped for a reason, and it was people responding to it. And this week we started to see real glimmers of people responding to it, and this might be the beginning of that, but I think that's where we're headed.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Sarah Grace for coming in. Thank you to our producer, Andrea Tudhope, and we'll see you guys soon.